There is a quality that separates every man who has ever built something lasting from every man who has tried and failed. Not intelligence. The world is full of intelligent men who have built nothing. Not courage. Courage without direction is simply expensive noise. Not even virtue in the conventional sense. History is full of virtuous men who were outmaneuvered by men of considerably less virtue and considerably more calculation. The quality is patience. Not the patience of a man who is waiting because he has no other option. Not the resigned patience of someone who has accepted that things move slowly and there is nothing to be done about it. Not the passive, comfortable patience of a man who has confused stillness with wisdom. The active patience of a man who understands timing. Who knows that every situation has a moment when action produces the intended result and 1,000 moments when the same action produces nothing, or produces the opposite of what was intended. Who has developed, through discipline and experience and honest self-examination, the capacity to hold his position, continue his work, and wait for the moment when moving is actually the correct choice. This is one of the rarest qualities in human beings. And it is, in my observation, one of the most determinative of outcomes across every domain in which human beings compete. My name is Niccolò Machiavelli. I spent 14 years in the service of the Florentine Republic. I negotiated with men who controlled armies and men who controlled the church and men who controlled the money that both of those things run on. I watched empires built and unmade. I watched men of extraordinary capability destroy years of careful work through a single impatient action. I watched men of modest capability outlast and outmaneuver their more gifted rivals simply by understanding something the gifted men did not. The right action at the wrong moment produces a worse outcome than no action at all. Today we go inside the art of patience, not as a philosophical abstraction, as a practical intelligence, as the specific understanding of timing, positioning, and self-mastery that separates the men who build lasting things from the men who almost did. I want to begin with an observation that took me years to understand fully. Most men are not defeated by their enemies. They are defeated by their own impatience. I watched this across my entire career in Florence. Men who had built real advantages, real positions, real reserves of influence and capability, threw them away not because a stronger opponent defeated them but because they could not hold still long enough for the advantage to pay off. They saw an opportunity that was not yet ripe and moved on it too early. They felt the pressure of uncertainty and responded with action when stillness was what the moment required. They mistook movement for progress, activity for strategy, doing something for doing the right thing. And in moving too early they revealed their position. They exhausted their resources. They gave their opponents information they would not otherwise have had. They converted a building advantage into a visible vulnerability. I saw this pattern repeat so many times that I eventually stopped being surprised by it. Impatience is not a personality flaw. It is a structural weakness of human psychology. We are built for immediate response. The threat appears, we react. The opportunity presents itself, we move. The uncertainty becomes uncomfortable, we do something to relieve it. This was useful in an environment where the threats and opportunities were immediate and physical. Run from the predator. Chase the prey. Act now or lose the moment. But in the environment most of us actually navigate, the threats and opportunities are rarely immediate. They are slow-moving. They develop across weeks and months and years. And the man who responds to them with the speed his nervous system prefers almost always moves too early. The art of patience is, at its root, the art of overriding this impulse, of developing the capacity to sit with uncertainty, to hold position under pressure, to continue building when the temptation is to act, until the moment arrives when acting is actually correct. This capacity is not natural. It is built. And it is built through a specific kind of experience that most men actively avoid. In the winter of 1502, I was sent to meet Cesare Borgia at Imola. Borgia was at that moment consolidating his control over the Romagna, the region of central Italy that his father Pope Alexander VI had tasked him with bringing under papal authority. He was doing this with a combination of military force, strategic alliance, and a quality of psychological presence that I found, despite everything I knew about him, genuinely remarkable. I spent several months in his company, observing him, reporting back to the Florentine Signoria on his movements, his intentions, his likely next steps. And what I observed in those months stayed with me for the rest of my life. Borgia never moved before he was ready. Never. This sounds simple. It is not simple. In the environment he was operating in, the pressure to move before you are ready is constant and enormous. His enemies were moving. His allies were shifting. The Pope's health was uncertain, and with it the political foundation that made Borgia's entire enterprise possible. Every day he waited was a day his opponents had to regroup, reposition, find new alliances, develop new strategies to counter him. And still he waited. Until the conditions were exactly as he needed them. Until his forces were positioned precisely where he intended. Until the intelligence he had gathered was complete enough to act on with confidence. Until the moment, which he seemed to sense with an accuracy that bordered on the uncanny, when moving would produce the maximum effect with the minimum exposure. When he finally moved, it was with a speed and decisiveness that left his opponents no time to respond. The waiting had seemed like inaction. It was the opposite. It was the most active phase of the entire operation. The gathering, the positioning, the preparation, the patient accumulation of every advantage that the moment of action would then deploy. I wrote about Borgia and the Prince as an example of virtue. Not because I approved of his methods in every instance, but because he understood something that very few men of his or any era understand. Patience is not the absence of action. It is the discipline of preparation. It is the accumulation of advantage across time, waiting for the moment when that advantage can be deployed with maximum effect. The impatient man deploys his advantage before it is fully accumulated. He gets a fraction of the result he would have gotten if he had waited. The patient man waits until the advantage is complete. And then he moves with a speed and force that the impatient man never achieves, precisely because the impatient man spent his resources before the moment arrived. I want to talk about what patience actually feels like from the inside. Because most descriptions of it make it sound like a comfortable, serene state of wise waiting. It is not. Patience, genuinely practiced, is uncomfortable. Sometimes extremely uncomfortable. It requires sitting with uncertainty when the nervous system is demanding resolution. It requires holding position under pressure when every instinct is saying move. It requires continuing to build when the results of the building are not yet visible and may not be visible for a long time. In my years of service to Florence, there were many periods when the right strategy was to wait. To hold the Republic's position, maintain the alliances we had, avoid the costly military engagements that impatient men in the Signoria were constantly pushing for, and let the situation develop until it was clearer what action would actually produce the result we needed. These periods were not comfortable. The pressure to act was constant. The men around me who did not understand timing interpreted waiting as weakness, as indecision, as a failure of nerve. There is something deeply uncomfortable about being the man in the room who is arguing for patience when everyone else is arguing for action, especially when the action they are proposing feels, in the moment, like it might work. But this is precisely where the art of patience requires something beyond mere understanding of its value. It requires the psychological capacity to tolerate the discomfort of waiting. To sit with the uncertainty, with the pressure, with the criticism of men who mistake activity for effectiveness, and hold your position anyway. This capacity is what I mean when I say patience is built rather than natural. It is built through the repeated experience of tolerating discomfort without acting on it, through the accumulated evidence that waiting, when the waiting is purposeful and the preparation is continuing, eventually produces the moment that makes the waiting worthwhile. Every man who has ever developed genuine patience has a story about the moment when he held still under pressure and was proved right by what followed. And that experience becomes the foundation of the capacity to do it again, the next time the pressure is even greater and the uncertainty even deeper. You cannot build this capacity without going through it. There is no shortcut. The discomfort is the training. There is a distinction I must make clearly, because it is one of the most important distinctions in everything I am describing today. The difference between patient waiting and passive waiting. Passive waiting is what most men do when they tell themselves they are being patient. They have stopped acting. They are not preparing. They are not building. They are simply waiting for something to change, hoping that time will resolve what they have declined to engage with. This is not patience. It is avoidance with a philosophical label attached to it. Patient waiting is completely different. The patient man is never still in the way the passive man is still. He is building, preparing, accumulating, developing. He is doing everything that can be done in the current conditions to be more ready for the moment when acting is correct. In the military context I observed throughout my career, the difference was between an army that used the waiting period to rest, resupply, train, gather intelligence, and position its forces for maximum effect, and an army that simply sat in its camp waiting for orders. Both armies were waiting. One was becoming more capable with every day that passed. The other was becoming less capable through the degradation of discipline and morale that comes from purposeless inactivity. The patient man is the first army. He is always in motion, always building, always becoming more ready for the moment that has not yet arrived. This is why the art of patience and the development of virtue are inseparable. The man who is developing his virtue, who is building his craft, his capability, his understanding, his network of genuine relationships, his reputation for reliability and depth, is automatically practicing the art of patience. Because all of these things take time. All of them require the willingness to invest effort now for returns that will not arrive immediately. All of them require the capacity to continue building when the results are not yet visible. The man who is genuinely developing himself has no time for the kind of impatience that destroys other men. He is too absorbed in the building to spend energy on the premature deployment of what is not yet built. I want to apply this specifically to the domain of attraction and relationships, because this channel is built around that domain and the art of patience has specific and precise applications there that most men never understand. The impatient man in the domain of attraction is immediately recognizable. He moves too fast. He reveals too much too soon. He pushes for resolution of uncertainty before the uncertainty has had time to produce the wanting that makes resolution feels like arrival rather than relief. He meets someone who interests him genuinely and within days, sometimes within hours, he has given her everything. All of his attention, all of his availability, all of his feeling displayed without reservation. He is, in his own understanding, being honest, being genuine, being the kind of man who does not play games. What he is actually doing is acting before the conditions are ready. The connection that might have become something real and deep and lasting, given time to develop at the pace that genuine connection develops, is instead rushed into a shape that cannot hold. He has resolved the uncertainty before it had time to produce the depth of wanting that would have made the resolution feel like something earned. And she, sensing the rush, sensing the urgency beneath the generosity, sensing that his pace is being set by his own discomfort with uncertainty rather than by the natural rhythm of two people genuinely getting to know each other, responds with the only move available to her. She creates distance. Not because she does not feel the connection, but because the pace of his pursuit has communicated something she cannot ignore. It has communicated that he cannot wait. And a man who cannot wait is a man who does not trust the thing he is building enough to let it develop at its own pace. That lack of trust is contagious. If he does not trust it, she begins to wonder whether she should. The patient man in the domain of attraction operates entirely differently. He is genuinely interested, genuinely curious, genuinely present when he is present. But his pace is set by his own direction, not by his anxiety about the outcome. He does not rush because he is not afraid. He is not afraid because he has something to return to when he is not with her. He has the building, the work, the direction that was his before she arrived and will be his whatever happens here. And so, he can afford to let the connection develop at the pace that genuine connection develops. He can afford to leave the conversation before it is exhausted. He can afford to let her wonder between encounters what he is doing and what he is thinking because he is genuinely doing and thinking things that are worth wondering about. His patience is not a technique. It is the natural expression of a man who is full enough that this particular outcome, however much he wants it, does not determine whether he is okay. And that fullness, that groundedness, that capacity to want something genuinely and pursue it without urgency, is one of the most compelling things a human being can project. It communicates something that very few men communicate. It communicates that he trusts what is between them enough to let it become what it is, without forcing it into what he needs it to be. That trust, extended toward her without demand, is what creates the conditions in which the real thing can actually develop. Let me tell you about fortune. Because no discussion of patience is complete without an honest accounting of what we control and what we do not. I have written extensively about fortune. About the fact that roughly half of what happens to any man is beyond his control. The timing of events, the movement of circumstances, the decisions of other people, the interventions of chance that can undo in an afternoon what has been built across years. I know this from the most personal possible experience. I spent 14 years building a position of genuine influence in the service of Florence. I was good at what I did. I understood the political landscape of Italy with a depth that very few of my contemporaries matched. I had genuine relationships with the most powerful men in the peninsula. And then fortune shifted. The Medici returned. The Republic fell. I was stripped of my position, arrested, tortured, and sent into exile. Not because I had failed. Because circumstances moved in a direction that no individual action on my part could have controlled. Fortune is real. It is powerful. And it cannot be eliminated by any degree of preparation or patience or virtue. But here is what I learned in the years of exile that followed, writing at Sant'Andrea in Percasina, with nothing left but my mind and my accumulated understanding. Fortune can take everything external. It cannot take what has been built internally. The years of building, of developing my understanding, of sharpening my ability to see clearly and think precisely and write with enough force to make the truth felt as well as understood, those were mine. Not Florence's. Not the Medici's. Not Fortune's. And when fortune eventually created a space for the work to matter again, I was ready for it. Not because I had been waiting passively. Because I had continued building even when there was no immediate audience for what I was building. This is the deepest argument for patience that I know how to make. The man who is patient in the deepest sense is not the man who is waiting for a particular outcome. He is the man who has committed to the building regardless of outcome. Who has understood that the development of his virtue, the construction of his capability and his understanding and his depth, is worth doing independent of any particular result it produces. That man is never truly at the mercy of fortune. Because what fortune can take she can give back. And what she cannot take is already his. Build for yourself first. Build as if the outcome is uncertain, because it is. Build as if fortune may intervene at any moment, because she may. Build in such a way that the building itself is the point, and the outcomes are what follow from it rather than what justify it. That is the patience of a man who cannot ultimately be defeated. Because his foundation is not in the outcomes. It is in the work itself. And the work is always available, regardless of what fortune does. I want to address something that comes up whenever I discuss patience with men who are in the middle of difficult situations. They say, I understand the principle. But how long do I wait? How do I know when the moment has arrived? How do I distinguish patient preparation from passive avoidance? These are the right questions, and they deserve honest answers. The first answer is this. You know you are genuinely waiting rather than passively avoiding by the quality of what you are doing while you wait. If the waiting period is producing growth, if you are more capable, more prepared, more developed at the end of it than you were at the beginning, you are practicing patience. If the waiting period is producing nothing, if you are simply enduring time rather than using it, you are practicing avoidance with a more flattering name. The second answer is about the moment of action. How do you recognize it? In my experience, the moment of action almost always announces itself through a convergence of conditions. The preparation feels complete or complete enough. The opportunity is genuinely present, not imagined out of impatience. The cost of acting is lower than the cost of continuing to wait. And there is a quality of readiness, a settled clarity that is different from the anxious urgency that drives premature action, that tells you the moment is now. This quality of settled clarity is itself something that is built through practice. The first time you face a moment of potential action, you may not be able to distinguish it from anxiety. But across time, across repeated experience of holding still under pressure and then moving at the right moment, you develop a felt sense for the difference. Trust that felt sense. Not blindly. Check it against your preparation, against the actual conditions on the ground, against honest assessment of whether you are ready or merely impatient to be done with the waiting. But trust it, because the alternative, waiting for perfect certainty before acting, is itself a form of impatience. The impatience of a man who cannot tolerate the uncertainty of moving before every variable is resolved. Perfect certainty is never available. The patient man acts when the conditions are right, knowing they are not perfect. The impatient man acts before the conditions are right because the imperfection of the current moment feels worse than the risk of the premature action. The patient man's timing is better. Not perfect, better. And in the domains where timing determines outcome, better is everything. There is one more thing I must say about patience, and it is the thing that took me longest to understand. Patience is not only a strategic tool. It is a form of respect. Respect for the thing you are building. Respect for the people you are building it with or toward. Respect for the reality that good things take the time they take and cannot be rushed into existence without losing something essential in the rushing. I did not always understand this. In my years of active service, I sometimes pushed for resolution before the conditions were ready because I was impatient with the pace of other men's decision-making. I sometimes moved before the moment was right because the waiting had become uncomfortable and I had convinced myself that the conditions were close enough. I was wrong on those occasions more often than I was right. What I learned, slowly and through the costly evidence of experience, was that the things most worth building have their own pace. A genuine alliance takes the time it takes to develop the trust that makes it genuine. A real understanding of a complex political situation takes the time it takes to develop the depth that makes the understanding accurate. A true connection between two people takes the time it takes to develop the roots that make it able to survive difficulty. Rush any of these and you get the appearance of the thing without its substance. An alliance that holds in easy times and breaks under pressure. An understanding that is technically accurate but misses the depth that makes it useful. A connection that feels significant but cannot survive the first real test. The patient man is willing to wait for the real thing. Not because he is indifferent to having it, because he values it enough to let it develop properly. That is the respect I am describing, and it is rare. Most men, if they are honest, would rather have the appearance of the thing quickly than the real thing slowly. The imitation of depth rather than the real depth that only time and sustained attention can produce. But the appearance deteriorates, the real thing compounds. And the man who has learned to build the real thing slowly, patiently, with the discipline to let it take the time it needs, eventually holds something that the impatient man, surrounded by his quickly acquired and quickly deteriorating imitations, cannot touch. I am writing this from Sant'Andrea in Percasina, where fortune has placed me and where I have remained, building, for longer than I would have chosen. I did not choose this patience. It was imposed on me by circumstances I could not control. But in the years of its practice, I have come to understand something about it that I could not have understood any other way. Patience, genuinely practiced, does something to a man. It deepens him. It clarifies him. It strips away the noise and the urgency and the need for immediate resolution and leaves something quieter and more substantial underneath. It leaves a man who knows what he is building and why. Who is not moved by the impatience of others, by the pressure of circumstances, by the discomfort of uncertainty. Who has been tested by time and found that the building continues regardless. That man is different from the man he was before the patience was imposed on him. He is more himself, more directed, more capable of the kind of focused, sustained effort that produces things worth producing. He has learned, in other words, what patience actually teaches. Not just how to wait, how to build, not just how to hold still, how to continue. Not just how to endure the gap between where he is and where he intends to be. How to use that gap. How to make it the engine of the becoming rather than the evidence of the not yet arrived. Fortune took everything from me that was external. The position, the influence, the daily engagement with the political life of the city I had given my best years to. What she could not take was the mind, the accumulated understanding, the capacity for clear observation and honest analysis that 14 years of watching human beings pursue and lose and rebuild power had developed in me. And in the patience of exile, that capacity deepened further, because I had nothing to do with it except use it. Nothing to deploy it on except the work of trying to understand as completely as I could what I had seen and what it meant. The prince came from that patience, so did everything else I wrote that has lasted. Not despite the waiting. Because of it. Here is what I want you to take from everything I have said today. Patience is not a personality trait. It is a practice. It is a capacity that is built through the repeated experience of holding still when movement is tempting, continuing to build when results are not yet visible, and trusting that the right moment will arrive for the man who is ready for it. The building is never wasted. Every day of genuine preparation, of real development, of actual deepening of capability and understanding, is a day that cannot be taken from you. It is accumulated in a place that fortune cannot reach. And when the moment arrives, as it always does for the man who is ready for it, you will move with a speed and force and precision that the impatient man never achieves. Because the impatient man has been spending what you have been saving. He has been deploying what you have been accumulating. He has been arriving at moments half prepared, where you will arrive fully ready. That is the advantage that patience builds. Not quickly, not dramatically. Across time, with the quiet, unstoppable accumulation of a man who has understood that the building is the point and the outcomes are what follow from it. Be that man. Not tomorrow. Today. In the specific, unglamorous, deeply unsexy work of doing the thing you are supposed to be doing instead of the thing that anxiety is pulling you toward. Hold your position. Continue your work. Let the moment come to you. It is coming. And when it arrives, you will be ready. That readiness is everything. It is, in the end, the only thing that was ever in your hands.